Well, greetings class and welcome to week 4 of COUN4306, Wisdom Literature, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. As always, we're thinking about this from a biblical point of view, and in particular biblical counseling. How do we use these books to counsel other people, to counsel ourselves? And just a reminder, the Bible is sufficient for everything that you need for life and godliness. It teaches you about progressive sanctification, yes, even in the book of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes in the Old Testament. And it does give you instructions for how to grow and change. Lots of them in Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. And this class is an opportunity to take that wisdom, you're drinking it in week after week, and apply these principles in your own life. Nothing has changed in how we're grading things. There are 1,000 points available to you through journaling, reading, discussion boards, papers, quizzes, special assignments, and that final exam. And the grade scale has not changed. As you know, this is new for this academic year that we're doing pluses and minuses on grades. And then this is our schedule. A journal every week, a quiz on weeks 1, 3, 4, 5, and 7, discussion boards every week but the last week, a paper every week but the last week, a special assignment, which is really just another paper, every week but the last week, and then that final exam on week 8. And you can see how they are accumulating over the dates. So you've already had 210 point opportunities, and by the end of this week you'll have 335 point opportunities. I've also included in the notes, because for quick reference, a quick view of what topic and what readings we're doing and special assignments we're doing in each week. There's the first 4 weeks, there's weeks 5 through 8. I'm not going to walk through those every week, but I will leave them in the notes in case you want to pull up the latest notes to remind you where you are. Online instruction, we do this video. You guys have been through this a lot of times. We look at last week's assignments, this week's assignments, and a sneak peek at next week's assignments. And there's reading and textbooks and other resources, journaling, quizzing, papers and special assignments, and a final exam. For the reading for last week, you read Lesson 2, Moral Purity, the written lecture by Dale Canwright. You read Proverbs 16 through 31, the second half of the book of Proverbs, so you should have completed the entire book of Proverbs in your reading by now. In the notes, we're reading those in 20% chunks because we're doing it over 5 weeks. So hopefully you're making good progress with that and taking advantage of journaling while you read so that you get your journaling assignment done and you get to take notes on what's most meaningful to you. Then there was an article on serious faith. It had 6 parts, and that's the one time I gave you permission to do one journal entry for all 6 of those. Thank you for that. And then David Bull from Family Talk, not Family Talk, Family Life, different ministry, 40 consequences of adultery. There's the special assignment, the paper, the journal, and the discussion board as well. So, in discussion board number 2, and also for your special assignment, you were to write about a sitcom. And you guys chose great sitcoms because those are ones that I know lots of believers that have watched them, and lots of even members of our own family that have watched them. And for some of you, you kind of have knowingly watched it despite the sexual immorality that's included in it, because it's done in a soft way and it's easily overlooked for the good acting and the other battles between good and bad, good and evil that are in a righteous format. Others of you watched these shows when you were much younger, maybe before you were a believer, and you were shocked by how loose and immoral they were. And so it was interesting watching you all grapple with that. And the intended purpose, I think, was achieved, to sensitize you to stand up against those things, especially those of you that are parents, to call those things to the attention of your children so that they have that ability to discern as well. Paper number 2 asked you to do an internet search by typing the words moral purity in your search engine. Pick an article and write a 2-page summary and upload it. You can talk about what you liked, what you didn't like, and points of agreement that you had with it. And so that was good to have you be, because most of you chose something that was faith-based, that was Christian-based, evangelical-based, I'd even say. But there were still things that you could look at that you could challenge. So I appreciate you doing that. As mentioned, the special assignment was the same as the discussion board, so all you needed to do is upload it in both places and get double credit. I think this is the only week where I gave you that benefit, so I hope you enjoyed easing up on the workload a little bit there. So let's look at this week. This week is going to be looking at the topic of money, finances. What all is in Proverbs and Ecclesiastes about finances? You'll be reading Proverbs 1 through 15 again, so this is your second time going through the book. You'll be reading the third 20% chunk of Constable's Notes. And I want you to thoroughly examine the following 3 web pages: Crown Financial Ministries, Compass Finances God's Way, and Dave Ramsey's web page. And I want you to pull down every pull down menu and click on every selectable thing in the pull down menu. So you will have looked at 15 to 20 web pages and at least seen what they offer there, and then journal about that. The things you found that you thought would be useful, the things that were surprising, perhaps things that seemed useless. Just journal like you would normally journal about those web pages. There is a written lecture from Dale Canwright on Lesson 3 about money. There's a discussion board, which is going to be an application of your favorite financial proverbs, and there's a paper, which is going to be a 2-page paper on counseling a couple in a financial mess. And like I said last week, whenever we do counseling, make sure you include the 6 elements of biblical counseling in your answer. And then for the special assignment, there's a 2-page paper on a secular pro-debt article. So I've got these 2 pages here because as you are looking at Dave Ramsey's webpage, I want you to specifically look at his 7 baby steps and analyze those. For the discussion board, we're going to be self-confessing to people in the class. It's a small number of people, and you guys know each other well enough. I think you'll be comfortable with that. If you're not, you can email me individually if you desire. But I want you to talk about where you are in the baby steps. Crown and Compass both use the money map, which has these 7 destinations. They are similar but a little bit different than Dave Ramsey's baby steps. In fact, I was around when we were creating this at Crown Financial Ministries, because I, as a seminar instructor, used to brief Dave Ramsey's baby steps, and they wanted to think more thoroughly through how to do it, and especially in steps 2, 3, and 4, they made some slight differences than the way Dave does things. So make sure you include analysis of those in your journaling. Now, I'm going to dive into, since it's one of my favorite topics, Dell's notes about money and Proverbs. So a summary of the general financial principles there. There's topics including giving and being a steward versus an owner. Dell includes a couple of case studies in there. One is a couple that's deeply in debt, even though they are committed believers and they've tithed all their lives. How does that happen? And analyze that. He has another one about an older couple with lifelong bad financial habits, and now that they're approaching the end of life, there's a lot of consequences for that are kind of painful. He goes through Proverbs 6 through 8, which is about observing the ant and how without a chief ruler or officer, she gathers surplus in her harvest so that she will have a sufficiency in the fall, in the winter, and how we should analyze that and think the same way. In our peak years of earning, we should be setting aside money that we're going to need later in the winter of our lives when we're not capable to do all that we could labor-wise to earn money. Proverbs 27:23 through 37 talks about knowing well the condition of your flocks and your herds, because that was in agrarian society, that was the measure of wealth. That's how many sheep and cattle you owned. For us, it would be know well the condition of your checkbook. Make sure it balances every month. Know well the condition of your 401k so that you know that money that you're going to set aside for the winter of your life is going to be there. Know well the interest rates on the loans you have and how many payments you have left so that you're working that plan to get those debts paid and get them out of the way. be engaged with that. So many times I sit down with someone and ask those kinds of fundamental questions, and they have no idea what the answers are or even how to find them. So they got to go make phone calls to their creditors and their banking institutions and investment institutions because they're not organized about it. They're not being good stewards of what God has entrusted to them. Dave Ramsey says money with a plan goes twice as far as money without a plan. And it's true. And if you want to be a good steward, you're going to be engaged with those kinds of things. Proverbs 16 verse 9 is excellent. A wise man looks ahead and sees trouble, and whereas a fool proceeds headlong into that trouble. We all have medical conditions that surprise us, accidents that happen that affect our health and affect our finances, affect the value of the things that we own. We do have retirement coming when we're not going to be able to do all that we can. All of those things, you can look into the future and see that those are highly likely to happen. And I need to have a plan now. I need to have a good health insurance program. I need to have a good life insurance providing for my spouse and my children that are dependent on my income in these years. Then Proverbs 22:7, one of my favorites. It is the borrower is the lender's slave. As the rich rules over the poor, the borrower is the lender's slave. Every time you borrow money, whether it's a mortgage or a car loan or a student loan or a credit card swipe at McDonald's, you are trading your future labor for an immediate reward now. It is the classic example of immediate gratification, and our culture thrives on it, and we as lemming Christians have just fallen into it. I can understand borrowing money for a home mortgage now because the housing costs are so inflated. Do you know that before Franklin Roosevelt there was no mortgage more than 10 years? Franklin introduced the 30-year mortgage. There are ways that people create 75 and 90-year mortgages today. Our current president is recommending that we have 90-year mortgages. All that does is allow the prices to go up even higher. That's why they are so much a larger percentage of what we own today. And all of that lures us into becoming slaves to those lenders. Now, I said I can understand a house mortgage, but I don't understand a car loan, a credit card bill, where you're paying 20+% when you're an obedient believer that knows that God provides your needs and He's the owner of the cattle on 1,000 hills. Why would I think He wants me to go borrow money from the unsaved to do His will? So think about Proverbs 22:7. As the rich rules over the poor, the borrower becomes the lender's slave. You are in slavery until you pay that last creditor off and are no longer obligating your future earnings to pay that lender back. So think about those things as you're reading through this. There's more principles from Proverbs. Proverbs 21:20 says there's precious oil in the house of the wise, whereas they go into the house of the fool and the cupboards are bare. We should have emergency savings. You should have, it's reasonable to have 3 to 6 months of living expenses at the ready in the event you have an accident. Proverbs 21:5 compares the diligent to the hasty. Those that want to get rich quickly get poorer even quicker, it says in the Living Bible translation of that verse. Debt enables you to make hasty decisions. That's why you can walk onto a car lot not planning to buy one, and within an hour they've sold you a car and you've signed your future away, your future labor away. Third, buying cars for cash. Even secular financial experts recognize it is foolish to borrow money and pay interest on top of interest for a depreciating asset. The thing's going down in value. This isn't even for an investment. It's for something that's going down in value. So learn to act your wage by buying the kind of car you can afford to pay cash for, and it will pay dividends for you in the future. Proverbs 21:17. It talks about the love of pleasure and how it drains your bank accounts. Proverbs 25:28 says that you should rule your spirit. It is really self-control that we're talking about here, that God wants you to have. If you have that self-control, you will be like a city with great walls that defends itself and can grow and thrive as an economy. But if you do not, rule your spirit, then you'll be like a city without any walls, that any creditor or charlatan or get-rich-quick salesman can take advantage of you. We Christians are the most notorious gullible people when it comes to signing up for get-rich-quick things, one of which is predatory college loans at privately held universities, for-profit universities. Arlington is a non-for-profit university like most, but there are for-profit ones whose main skill is in helping people sign up for student loans. I've counseled many a person that wanted to go into ministry or go into missions, but they had $100,000 worth of student debt that they'd signed up to through these colleges, and they were crippled. I mean, it's not reasonable to ask people that are sacrificing and giving for you to go work in that kind of ministry to pay your college bills for you. You are the one that traded your future labor for that instant gratification of what you thought was a good deal. Let's talk about positive teachings about money. Proverbs 10:15 talks about the rich versus the poor. You too can be one of what the Bible would call the rich just by saving a little each paycheck. One of the wisest things you can do when you first start getting a paycheck, especially those of you that are traditional students in the college age bracket, haven't had that first long-term full-time job, make it a point. 10% is going to be given away, 10% is going to be invested, and I'm going to learn how to live on the 80%. And if you do that for your entire life and avoid these other debt traps, you'll be in great shape even without a very large income. Proverbs 13:22 talks about inheritance. Those that are wise create an inheritance not only for their children but their children's children. I mean, that's what my wife Susan and I are striving to do with our family tree. We've tried to help our kids learn these financial biblical principles in their lives as they launch into adulthood. They're all in adulthoods, and now we've got grandkids coming along, so we're devising ways to do that for them as well, so they don't fall into the traps of selling their future for things that they can get instantly gratified by today. So, for the discussion board, post a brief comment about your favorite proverb. There's a few to choose from that we just talked about, dealing with money and how you are currently applying that proverb to your own financial situation. Reference which one of Dave Ramsey's baby steps or the Crown or Compass money map destination you are currently working on in your financial life. For this week's paper, write a 2-page response on how you would deal with the following counseling situation. So remember to look at the counseling, 6 elements of counseling, biblical counseling. A husband and wife have created a financial mess for themselves. They have accumulated an amount of debt that they are unable to repay. They have received counsel from their pastor that they should file bankruptcy and start over. After looking at their situation, you agree that it is a desperate situation. There is no way they can pay all the things they've committed to for their monthly bills. Your counsel, they have said, will determine their decision. The pastor said, before you go do bankruptcy, you got to talk to this student at ABU that's taking this Proverbs class. So, be sure you include meaningful and specific homework and incorporate the teachings that you have found in Proverbs to give them counsel about this situation. So, and do remember to include the 6 elements of biblical counseling. Now, special assignment number 3. Google the word debt. Choose an article from a non-Christian perspective that is pro-debt. So it's one that's going to teach you how to use debt to your advantage, how to take advantage of leverage. Then analyze that article through a biblical lens. Upload your findings in a 1-page summary in assignment number 3 here for the special assignment. Now we were going to talk about the final project. Actually, I'm going to talk about week 4 first. So for week 4, you have this, now looking into next week, the new topic is about marriage what do Proverbs and Ecclesiastes say about marriage? You'll be reading for the second time Proverbs 16 through 31. You'll be reading the fourth 20% chunk of Dr. Thomas Constable's commentary on Proverbs. Then you have two articles. One is a marriage helper article on marriage communication, and another is Ken Boa's Communication Skills podcast. So that's an audio to listen to. And you'll be reading Dale Canwright's notes. We'll have a discussion board that'll talk about significant communication truths from Proverbs, and we'll be writing a paper that explains a communication proverb that's not covered in the lesson. So you have to do a little hunting there. And then the special assignment is a communication principle that you personally have violated. So there's a little confession and self-deprecation and humility required for that assignment. And then there is quiz number 4. For your reading assignments, last half of Proverbs for the second time. Dr. Constable's notes you'll pick up at Roman numeral number 3 on collection and read all the way through Roman numeral 5b1. That's roughly another 20% chunk. And then the marriage helper, and then Ken Boa's Communication Skills podcast. Take notes, highlight areas where you need to change, and it would be helpful in your counseling. For the discussion board, post to the discussion board one significant truth you've learned about communications from this lesson. Give the reference in Proverbs from which that truth is devised. And then for your paper, choose a proverb on communication that's not discussed in the lesson. Write out that passage with the reference. Explain the principle that flows from the passage, and then present a scenario in which you would apply the passage. For the special assignment, tell about a time when you had a communication breakdown, perhaps an argument or verbal fight with a loved one. If you are married, it must be about your spouse. If you are single, it can be about anyone that you've had a close relationship with, a sibling, parents, boyfriend, girlfriend, etc. Identify at least one biblical principle that you violated, and then specify what you should have done in order to be obedient to Scripture. The final project I went over in some detail last time. I'm including the notes here. But I'm not going to walk through them like I did last time. But if you need anything, text me or call me or email me, and I will try to get back to you within 24 hours. God bless you. Keep up the good work.